Welcome back to the Acceptance Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Gross. You know, late May has a strange kind of energy to it. School years are ending, graduation caps are flying through the air, and parents are sitting in folding chairs smiling with pride as they watch their kids step toward new adventures, while somewhere deep down realizing they aren't quite ready to write the ending to the chapter called childhood. Summer starts sneaking in through the windows, carrying the smell of barbecue smoke, fresh cut grass, sunscreen, and freedom. And even as adults, something about this season still wakes up the kid inside of us. So, I just want to sit together for a little while and reflect on where we've been, where we're headed, and why maybe none of us are nearly as lost as we think we are. So grab a second cup of coffee, sweet tea, or whatever helps you slow down for a few minutes, and let's talk about who we're becoming. Maybe it's hearing fireworks in the distance before the 4th of July even gets here. Maybe it's lightning bugs, or, well, maybe you know them as fireflies, dancing across the yard after dark. Or maybe it's remembering summer swims in your favorite creek, lake, river, or beach, where the water was always freezing for the first 30 seconds and then suddenly you felt invincible. There's just something about summer that reminds us life's supposed to be lived and not just survived. And maybe that's important because back around midnight on December 31st, a whole lot of us made promises to ourselves. We were going to lose weight, save money, start over, go to the gym, write a book, finally become the person we kept saying we wanted to become. And now here we are in late May, and some of us are doing pretty well. Some of us got sidetracked somewhere around Valentine's Day, but maybe growth was never supposed to look perfect. Maybe life was never about becoming flawless. Maybe it's just about becoming. You know what I think adulthood quietly steals from us sometimes? That's wonder. Not all at once, not dramatically. It just slowly slips out the back door while we're paying bills, answering emails, folding laundry, and trying to remember if we switched the clothes from the washer to the dryer 3 days ago. But every once in a while, a season shows up and reminds us who we used to be. And, summer does that. Summer reminds us of scraped knees and staying outside until the porch light came on. It reminds us of camping trips where hot dogs somehow tasted gourmet because they were cooked over a fire. It reminds us of sticky fingers from melted popsicles and marshmallows burned so badly you'd have to carefully pull the black char off the marshmallows before eating the hot molten lava. And maybe, most importantly, summer reminds us of what possibility feels like. As kids, summer felt endless, like adventure was waiting right outside the front door, and honestly, I think part of us still wants to believe that because deep down, no matter how old we get, we're still hoping there's something amazing waiting just ahead. Now, every January, millions of people sit down with fresh calendars, goals, and the terrifying confidence of someone who believes this will finally be the year they become emotionally balanced, financially responsible, and maybe develop a love for the gym. We make vision promises, we buy planners. Some of us really believe new gym shoes could outrun years of stress eating, emotional support drive-thrus, and late-night tacos. And for a little while, it feels exciting, hopeful even. But then life comes barreling in like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. Unexpected bills show up like uninvited relatives. Stress creeps in. Motivation quietly packs its bags and disappears sometime around February. Suddenly, the goals that once inspired us begin staring back at us like our harshest critics, holding a clipboard and zero compassion. And I think that's where a lot of people begin to lose themselves a little, not because they failed, but because they started measuring their worth by their progress instead of their humanity. I think one of the hardest things about goals is that we often turn them into scoreboards instead of guideposts. If we're succeeding, we feel worthy. If we struggle, we suddenly talk to ourselves like disappointed football coaches, but growth isn't linear. Life isn't linear. Some of us started this year carrying grief nobody else could see. Some of us entered this year exhausted already, and some survived things we never expected. So before we criticize ourselves for not being farther along, maybe we should pause long enough to recognize just how far we've already come. Maybe getting out of bed, setting boundaries, and just surviving was progress, and maybe We don't give ourselves enough credit for continuing to show up while still figuring things out. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Most people are treating adulthood like a group project where nobody actually knows what they're doing. Now, the second reflection, maybe that's why so many adults walk around looking exhausted in the cereal aisle. Deep down, we keep waiting for life to eventually settle down and make perfect sense. Like there's some magical checkpoint where confusion expires and confidence arrives wearing a name tag. But the truth is, most people are still figuring things out as they go. Some are here duct taping their lives together with deadlines, Starbucks coffee, and making panic look productive. And the more I think about it, the more I realize humanity has always been this way. We romanticize the people who came before us as fearless adventurers with unshakable confidence. I think about explorers like Lewis and Clark or Daniel Boone setting off toward places they'd never seen before. Can you imagine finally climbing to the top of the mountain, believing the big reveal was waiting there, only to discover more valleys and more mountains stretching endlessly ahead? I bet there were moments they wanted to quit, moments they wondered if there was anything worth finding at all. And honestly, haven't we all had seasons like that? You finally pay something off and another bill shows up. You finally heal from one disappointment and life introduces you to another one wearing a fake mustache and carrying emotional baggage. Sometimes life feels like a never ending group project where nobody else is answering the emails. But I want to let you in on a little secret. Courage isn't certainty. Courage is movement despite uncertainty. And maybe failure isn't proof we should stop. Maybe it's just evidence we're still exploring. I've started replacing the phrase, I failed, with, I haven't figured out what works just yet, but let me tell you what doesn't work. That feels more honest, and honestly, a little healthier too. I think one of the quietest tragedies of adulthood is how often we confuse being busy with being alive. Somewhere between deadlines, grocery lists, unread emails, and trying to remember why we walked into the kitchen, we slowly begin treating joy like it's a reward instead of a human necessity. We tell ourselves we'll rest later, laugh later, travel later, breathe later, like life's some giant waiting room where happiness gets called by appointment only. And maybe that's why summer nostalgia hits people so hard. Because deep down, most of us remember a version of ourselves that knew how to enjoy things without turning them into accomplishments. Back when happiness wasn't optimized, monetized, tracked by a smartwatch, or turned into content for strangers online. Somewhere along the way, adults start believing joy has to be earned. But kids don't think like that. Kids chase lightning bugs because they glow. They cannonball into lakes because, well, that feels like fun. They laugh too loudly around campfires and believe one more s'mores is always an excellent decision, regardless of the stickiness of their fingers. Maybe part of becoming is learning how to reconnect with wonder again. Maybe healing looks like rolling the windows down on a summer night and taking that late night road trip with the sound of music filling the night air. Or maybe it looks like bad dancing at a backyard barbecue or sitting quietly outside listening to crickets while the world slows down for just 5 minutes. Not every moment has to be productive to matter. Sometimes the ride itself is the point. Now, as we wind down once again, I want you to remember something. No decision you make today is likely going to determine the rest of your life. You don't have to have everything figured out by the end of summer. And if you've forgotten about those goals you made a few months ago and want to start again tomorrow, well, then go for it. And if not, well, then there are other goals you could work on. You don't have to punish yourself for being human. You're allowed to still be becoming. And maybe that's the best part of all, because becoming means there's still places left to explore, dreams left to chase, sunsets left to watch, and campfires left to sit around. And yes, there'll probably be more mountains too, but there may also be views you can't even imagine yet. So if your goals have slipped a little this year, give yourself some grace. Tomorrow's still there. Your dreams are still there, and so are you. Not failing, just learning, still exploring, and still becoming. Now, if this episode connected with you, I'd love for you to share it with somebody who may need the reminder that they're allowed to grow at their own pace. And I'd love to hear from you too. What dream are you still chasing? What lesson are you still learning? And what part of yourself are you still becoming? And just remember, you're allowed to grow slowly. Nature does beautiful work without being rushed. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of those around you. The Acceptance Project podcast is a production of Bridging Success, LLC. To learn more about the podcast and our work, please visit bridgingsuccess.com. This podcast and its contents are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. I'm Dr. Bryan Gross, but I'm not a licensed therapist. The topics and opinions shared by me and any guests are our own and should not replace professional or medical advice. If you're seeking mental health support, medical guidance, or help with personal matters, please reach out to a licensed professional who can provide the individual support you need.